Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire and the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we have a very, very special guest. He is a coach and bicycle racer, Jeff Seckendorf. How you doing today, Jeff?
Good. You got it right. Awesome.
Yeah, I about butchered it up a little bit. I don't know what I was doing. That's why I always have to ask, or else I probably will butcher it a little bit. So how you doing today?
That's a great day. San Diego, sun shining, perfect day, not a cloud in the sky. I'm looking out. Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the number one question the audience is probably asking, who is Jeff Seckendorf?
So it's not a rhetorical question.
No.
It's real. So I'm a fitness and cycling coach. I've had a couple of long careers. I just aged up to 70, so I'm racing at a new age. So that's kind of become the forefront of my life, is to deal with, what it's like to race a bike at age 70. But I had a long career in the film industry. I had about 35 years in the film industry, making movies and commercials and all that stuff. And then when it was time to exit that, I started from scratch a scuba certification and training agency called Unified Team Diving. And I ran that for 17 years and just sold it this year.
Wow.
And now I'm coaching athletes, coaching masters athletes. I have a niche coaching people with Parkinson's disease. And I'm very committed to the Parkinson's community here in San Diego. I don't have Parkinson's, fortunately, but I do a lot to support that organization, the local Parkinson's Association.
Awesome. You were never involved in athletics as a kid, were you?
No. I grew up in a home where, we had books and, I had a camera. And that was my thing, and that camera led me to a really long and successful career as a director of photography on movies. But I didn't really start competing. I rode a bike my whole life. And, in high school, just after high school, somebody gave me a pair of wooden cross-country skis. And I thought that was cool. So I got on those and started discovering a little bit late that I had some propensity for this. And then started racing skis a little bit. Then I found out that, the ski season is like 8 weeks long and the bike season is like 10 months long. So we ended up on the bike. But I didn't really start competing until I got into my 50s and started doing triathlons.
That's crazy. Little crazy adventure you took in there, away from everything.
Yeah.
So in your career as a filmmaker, what type of challenges did you face, and what did those challenges teach you?
So the film industry is a very odd industry, I think, is a good way to put it. So I was living in New York and I was working in New York and I was working in LA. And for almost everybody in the film industry, except the very, very few you hear about every day, the film business involves having a part-time job making movies and a full-time job looking for work making movies. And so I spent a lot of time trying to get gigs, and it was good. I got really, really cool projects, and I did like 1,000 TV commercials and a bunch of movies. I went to film festivals and stuff like that. And, on set, I was a director of photography. So I ran the whole photography department, which was lighting and grip and camera. So, that would be a crew of anywhere from like 2 to 50, depending on the project or more. And it was awesome. And then one day it was like, I just can't spend another day looking for work. And that's when I started the scuba thing.
That's just like opposite ends of the spectrum a little bit, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
Hey, one day I'm here on the movie set. Next day, hey, I'm out here in the ocean. I'm going scuba.
But it was a little serendipitous, right? I was already an instructor, and I love scuba diving. And I had a guy come up to me, and I taught a class with him, and he was like, "I think I want to form a training agency." And I had become a pretty high-end education specialist in my couple of fields. right? So in the film industry, I taught for many, many years in workshop programs and as a mentor. I was a flight instructor teaching flying and aerobatics. It was a very natural thing for me to say, well, I'll help you start the scuba agency because I bring the education piece and some of the scuba, but I mostly brought the education piece. So it wasn't, although it seems like a big long leap, it was really a career making movies that had an education component for me, to another career teaching people to dive that had an education component to it, to now a coach, which of course has a big education component to it. So it seems that, I mean, the 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 actual things I did seemed disparate. It it was not that far apart.
Yeah. But what inspired you to go into that field, to scuba diving?
Oh, it's so random, Ryan. It was like literally I was just making movies and I was just fine about that, but always kind of with my eye on something to get me out of the film business. And then this thing just came up and I was like, let's try it. The safety net was filmmaking for me was a freelance scenario, so I could always go back. And when we started the scuba thing and the money was, tight and we were just getting going, I still ran off and did projects once in a while just because it was still fun. And the scuba thing wasn't supporting me fully yet, and so there was a transition there of a couple of years that made it work. Having a safety net, saying yes to something like that seems that crazy, but having a safety net, I think, is a really smart way to do it. It made the whole thing seem a lot less reckless.
Yeah. So, what made you decide to leave all this behind and hop on a bicycle in your 50s?
Yeah, so that was part of the scuba thing, right? The company that I started and ran was Unified Team Diving, which is a very high end boutique scuba training agency, and it has I don't want to say a fitness component to it, but we stress scuba as a lifestyle, and part of that is being strong, fit, and healthy. So that was part of it, and I was just riding my bike for you know recreational, but recreational for me was 100-mile bike rides, big tours, traveling around the world with my bike, stuff like that. It was beyond just pedaling to the park. So it was kind of a easy step one day to say, I think, because I ran my whole life just because running was fun. And I'm a terrible swimmer, but it was like, I think I'll try a triathlon. I'm just going to try this and see what happens. And, I think I was like 51 or 52, something like that. And, so I signed up for a little local sprint. San Diego's a huge triathlon community. And it turned out that I was pretty good at it. So, well, let's do another one. And let's do another one. And it just sort of snowballed. Um, and I started training more seriously and I started getting some level of results. And then on my 60th birthday, I just decided one day I was going to stop running competitively. Well, running at all. Um, Everybody I knew who was running was getting injured. They were getting hips and knees and ankles and tripping, and it's just horrible. So I just thought I'm going to go out on a high note, and I love the bicycle, and I was looking for something to sort of replace the whole triathlon thing with, and somebody took me to the velodrome here in San Diego. So we have a track. It's an oval 330-meter track that for bikes. And I watched the racing there, and it was so much fun because these people were sitting around telling stories, having fun, joking. Then they'd get on their bikes and do a 5-minute race or a 10-minute race and get back and joke and tell and more stories. And I was like, that might be my sport. And so I got very involved in track racing at age 60. And so I did that and still do. And that kind of led me to where I am now, which was attacking these various world and local and world records, distance and speed records on the bike. And that's kind of where I settled in.
Awesome. I love that story of like, hey, I'm not a very good swimmer, but hey, maybe I'm gonna try a triathlon. What don't you swim like a mile in that?
Yeah, they're all different, but so it's swim, bike, run, right?
Yeah.
So you swim, everybody starts together, and then you come back after the swim and you grab your bike. And so I'd get back and there'd be like 3 bikes there, mine and 2 others. So, everybody who could swim better than me was long gone. So I would have to just do everything I could to catch them on the bike, or some of them, and then catch as many of as I could on the run at the end of it. So yeah, swimming was a challenge. The people who do well in triathlon grew up swimming, it seems.
Yeah.
Kid swimmers. That wasn't me.
Why do you love the bike so much?
The bike is magical. It's magical. I mean, you can go anywhere. We travel with our bikes. We've done, I don't know how many trips to Europe, Australia. When I was teaching a lot of scuba around the world, I would take my bike. And so, I'm in Spain or Italy or wherever and have a bike and just go for rides in the morning in all these new places. And it's a very, very personal thing. And I just sort of took to it right over the years because, I mean, I probably started riding when I was in my mid to late 20s when I took it seriously. So now here I am 40, 50 years down the road and still love it. Just still love it. I think there's no better exercise, right? It's doesn't impact your body. You can do it forever. You can get to go fast, slow, ride with anybody. Something very cool about the bicycle.
Yeah. Do you only race on the track, or do you do road races too?
I do time trials on the road. So I don't do really any mass start racing where I'm in a big group.
Yeah.
That's just, again, because I didn't come out of that world. It seems a little sketchy to me just because I'm not used to it. But, in a time trial, you're riding against the clock. So, it's you and the bike. I'm a good competitor against myself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do a couple of road time trials a year, usually on my track bike. So, I do the world 6-hour time trial championships every year, and I have the course record for that race on fixed gear bikes. And, I just did the 6-hour record, which we can talk about. And that's, on the track. But, this long distance stuff seems to be good for me.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about your world records.
It's kind of an interesting story because I was working on the idea of attacking an hour record. So the hour record is amazing in cycling, or it's kind of iconic. It's been around for 100 plus years, right? It started in the 1800s. How far can you ride your bike in an hour? And it's on the track, and it's on a track bike, and it's very structured and organized. And so I held the hour record at the San Diego Velodrome for, I don't know, about 3 or 4 years until a friend of mine beat it. And then I aged out, so I can't go after that one again. But the hour record over the decades has kind of gone in and out of fashion. And when it's in fashion, it attracts a lot of people. And so I've been working on this for a couple of years to see if I can get to a point, in my physical fitness and my mental fitness and fortitude that I could actually successfully go after an hour record. And every year someone comes along and it creeps up and it creeps up and the distance creeps up. And right now it's, for my age group, it's about 44 kilometers, which is like 27 and something miles an hour for an hour, which is, it's a serious bike ride. And, my physiology is that I'm good to go long. I found out doing these world 6-hour time trial championships that I can actually sustain for a long period of time, in some ways, at a slightly lower speed and power level than I would for a shorter race, like an hour. So I just thought if I could do a 6-hour time trial on the road, why don't I try one on the track? And the World Ultra Cycling Association is the organization that manages these ultra distance records around the world. And, there are lots of different categories, but the category for an outdoor velodrome on a track bike for 100 kilometers, 100 miles, 200 kilometers in 6 hours, those records all seemed attackable for me. It seemed like knowing what I can do on the bike, I should have been able to get them. And so I started this process of getting ready for this track ride of 6 hours. Now, thinking that a ride on the track for 6 hours and a ride on the road for 6 hours was the same, turned out to be not true. Turned out to be a little bit naive because, the road goes up and down. There's areas to rest. You're standing up. You're making turns. You're stopping in the pits to grab water, and none of that. The track is like, I don't know if you saw any of the videos, but you put your head down, you get in an aerodynamic position, and you turn the pedals for 6 hours, and no stopping, no peeing. I was handed water and food because they could do hand up. So I had a friend of mine on an e-bike who would ride onto the track every half hour and hand me a bottle and a gel. And then I would just keep going. And I did it for 6 hours and 16 minutes to get to 200 kilometers. And I managed to smash all 4 records. Well, 3, because I set the 100-mile, but I beat the 200 kilometer record by like 2 hours.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's been great because it was more than just me, right? It was a whole team that helped me do this, and equally important, we did it as a fundraiser for the San Diego Parkinson's Association, and I raised like $15,000 for that organization, and brought a lot of awareness to that community and to the Parkinson's Association. And it was really interesting because of that $15,000, like 3/4 of it was donated by people who either didn't know about this organization or had never donated, or, were just learning about it or were coming to Parkinson's new or something like that. So, from a purpose standpoint, riding with purpose, it was pretty amazing. It was pretty amazing. The cheering squad, half the cheering squad out there on the track had Parkinson's. It was just great. It was a really satisfying thing to be able to take a very difficult event on a very difficult day and turn it into something really, really positive and really powerful, and doing a bunch of good work in the world, which the world could use right now.
Yeah, completely agree with that. It gave me a lot to unpack right there. Like, what type of mental toughness did it take, like, during the training, and like the type of training you had to do to prepare for that?
It's funny. My wife kept asking me, when are you going to do a 6-hour ride on the track to practice this? And my answer was always never, never. I have an amazing coach, and I understand a lot about coaching athletes. So we worked a lot on just building, my physical engine and my mental fortitude to be able to do this thing without doing like these long, endless rides. I did one 5-hour road ride like 2 weeks before it, which was good mentally because it meant, okay, I know I get through 5 hours, no problem. Still felt strong at the end of that. But, I'm a proponent of being able to train the next day, and doing a 6-hour ride to prepare for a 6-hour race, takes however long to recover from that. And that recovery period compromises training, right? I'm working right now with someone who is preparing for a marathon. And, we're probably going to do one 20-mile run before it. And it's going to be up against a rest week because the recovery is so long. It's just not productive. So I
Yeah.
just did a lot of interval work, tempo riding. I'd go out on the track and I'd ride the circles for an hour and a half, 2 hours, sometimes 3. But I did a lot of rides on the road. I just stayed on top of it. I think almost more importantly than that, because my fitness is pretty stable, right? I mean, I stay pretty fit for this. But the nutritional part, the fueling part, getting the food and water right, that was a huge thing. Because if you don't get that right, then nothing else matters. So I was able to work with this awesome company called Fuelin, and they were incredible getting me to a point where the fuel was amazing, right? I mean, I had done sweat rate tests, so I knew how much water I needed to replace. I had done really careful analysis of my expected power output for these 6 hours. And then we look back, working back from that on the amount of carbohydrates I'd need per hour and what form it could be in. Could it be gels? Did it have to be bar? I mean, all of this stuff, which, got way more sciencey than I'm used to.
Yeah.
But whatever we worked out just worked. So I would, the e-bike would come up to me every 30 minutes. We had a minute, but by the rules, we had a minute every 30 minutes to do these hand ups. So I'd grab a bottle of water, drink a quarter of it, toss it, and then get a gel flask and drink about 1.5 or 2 gels, carbohydrate gels, and toss that. And then I get another bottle and drink a quarter of that and toss that. And then my buddy on the e-bike would go pick up all the empties. And then we do it again every half hour. So I was, based on the sweat rate tests, I knew I had to drink a bottle an hour. That was working. Based on all the other stuff, I needed like 65 grams of carbohydrate an hour, which is very tolerable. So I was getting that. It was like amazing how well it worked. We were so prepped. I mean, I made commercials for decades, right? I just treated this like I was producing a movie.
Yeah. That's an interesting approach you took to it too. Like, the one thing I got a question about here is like the nutrition aspect that you mentioned was so important to you. Like, I work with countless young athletes, and you can't get that through to them, like how important nutrition is to fueling your body and then the recovery rate you need to go compete the next day.
Yeah, I have this whole thing. I do it with the athletes I coach too. There's food and there's fuel. And so the fuel drives the workout or the race. So for like the night before, 2 hours before, and then during, and then an hour after, that's fuel, right? And that's only for the race or the training. The other 20 hours a day or whatever you have left, that's food. And that keeps you alive. So if you want to lose weight, which a lot of people do, you lose weight out of the food section, but the fuel section is sacred. Because if you underfuel, then you don't get the benefit of the workout. If you undereat on the food part, then you can lose weight, or in Parkinson's, gain weight, whatever we need to do.
Yeah.
But dividing it up, so, if I'm going to burn 600 calories on the bike, I want to make sure that I've got 600 calories of fuel in me. And depending on the level of the ride, the intensity, then we split it up. How much is carbohydrate, how much can be fat, how much, how little can be protein, stuff like that. And kind of make the whole thing work in terms of, what are the reserves in your body? What do you need to replenish? How much can you tolerate? Is there gut distress if you take too much? All this other stuff in there. So on the younger athletes, it's different because, kids recover in like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Adults, we recover in like 2 days.
Yeah.
So
the recovery is so much different, but with them, it's trying to get them to say, hey, everything doesn't have to be the bad foods. I need to fuel my body a little bit more and prepare a little bit better with a little more water and the things that are going to produce energy and not wasted stuff.
Yeah, no, I've got grandkids. I know what kids eat. It's terrifying. So
what led you to start your coaching business?
Again, it was one of these things that was just very natural. Um, I'd been teaching, I'd been mentoring in the film business, mentoring as a flight instructor, mentoring in scuba. And it was a very short leap to start to mentor on the bike when I got to a point where I felt like I was, qualified, had the street experience, had some credibility. And I studied a lot and I certified up and I became a personal trainer and a certified cycling coach and just started taking on athletes. But the Parkinson's thing was different. Um, my relationship with Parkinson's is that my wife is a nurse practitioner and her whole practice is Parkinson's. So that's how I came into it, right? So I now have a gazillion friends with Parkinson's. She's been leading hikes all over the world with people with Parkinson's, like Everest Base Camp and Kilimanjaro and the Dolomites and Camino de Santiago, really cool hikes. So we have these people with Parkinson's who are training for these hikes all the time. Then when COVID showed up, which was, what is it, 2020, right? And I was really heavily involved in the Parkinson's community at that point. The gyms all closed and the programs, the group exercises all closed. And people were struggling because in Parkinson's, you have to exercise. It's the only thing that's known to slow the progression of Parkinson's is proper exercise. So at that point, I got together with a friend of mine and we started a company called Coach Me Strong. And it was initially very specific to people with Parkinson's. So we had coaches who understood it. They were PTs and exercise physiologists and personal trainers. And we started getting clients who needed some guidance to exercise to maintain some ability to push off symptoms of Parkinson's disease. And that went for a couple of years because COVID went for a couple of years. And it was very successful. And we served a lot of people in a really good way. And then when the gyms all started to reopen and the programs got back in person, Coach Me Strong kind of downturned a little bit and sort of went dormant for a couple of years. And then I still had the website up. And then, I don't know, like a year ago, somebody called me up and said, "Hey, I found your website. Will you coach me?" And by that time, I had become a cycling coach, become a personal trainer, and I could do this myself. I didn't need to hire all the other coaches for that company. So I said, sure. And I started coaching this person with Parkinson's. And then somebody else showed up and somebody else showed up. So, right now, we're deciding whether to market it, right? I mean, people are finding Coach Me Strong. If you just search exercise coaching for Parkinson's, it comes up and people call and it's cool. So I just sort of expanded on that and took on more cycling clients. I teach on the track here and it was the same as everything else, Ryan. It was just like, some of it's serendipity, some of it's being receptive to saying yes to things. And, some of it was right place, right time, make your own luck.
Yeah, I love it. You just go from one thing to the next. Here we go.
You have to try this stuff. You have to be willing to fail and you have to be willing to, to give it up and pivot if it doesn't work, right? Without calling it a failure. I mean, I think the best word to replace failure is pivot, right? So if this doesn't work, try that. If that doesn't work, try this. And, sometimes it's taking the same idea and massaging it until you find the right solution for it. And sometimes it's just saying, good time to quit. Let's do something else. There's a thing called the sunk cost effect, right? Which is you put money or time into something that's not working, but you've invested all this time and money. So you keep doing it, even though it's not working, and you put more money and time in it, but it's still not working. But now you have so much money and time in it, you can't quit because it's got all this money and time in it, but it's not working. So being able to look at the sunk cost effect and say, okay, this is just, we got to cut our losses. This one's not going to be a winner, and pivot off that, I think I think it's why I've been able to be pretty successful in these 3 or 4 different things I've done in my life, because although there have been 3 or 4 different things I've been really good and successful at, there have been probably 10 or 15 that were like, oh, there we go. We got to pivot off that one right away.
Yeah.
But you try stuff because you never know what hit. I mean, Coach Me Strong hit, right? And that's kind of turned into my coaching business. But it didn't start that way.
Yeah. I love that mentality though that you have right there. That's what it takes to be successful.
Yeah. Take yes for, or what is it? Take no for encouragement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How is training older athletes different than training younger ones?
Oh, it's so interesting you asked me that. I released a podcast on that yesterday. Did you see that? Or did you know
No.
that? No?
No.
That's so funny. My coach and I, Tracy Jacobs and I recorded a podcast for the Parkinson's Association, and I released yesterday or the day before on that exact topic, the difference between working with older athletes and not older athletes. And it was a fascinating discussion because we talked about all the classic things, right? As you age up, you know, muscle loss, bone loss, longer recovery, all the things that we sort of talked about here. But then we started looking at, well, if getting stronger or getting fitter or getting more durable or whatever you want to call it, it's never about doing the exercise, right? It's about doing the recovery. So there's a thing in training called adaptation, which is, for example, if you're doing bicep curls in the gym, you go do 30 bicep curls. You don't actually get stronger doing that. You actually get weaker, right? You microscopically injure that bicep muscle. And then over the next 2 or 3 days, that muscle heals better. More mitochondria, builds more capillaries, gets more blood flow, and builds back. So that recovery period is where the benefit of exercise manifests. And that process is called adaptation. Well, it's what you and I were talking about a few minutes ago with juniors and kids. Adaptation is adaptation. You know, the only difference between working with a 23-year-old athlete and a 73-year-old athlete is the period of adaptation is different, right? It takes a little longer for the older athlete to get that benefit of, you know, muscle regrowth and capillary growth and so on. But what Tracy and I came to at the end of that podcast was, it's not much different. It's kind of the same thing. Just, you know, the pacing of things and the structuring of structured training is a little different. But, you know, train, recover. Train hard, recover hard. And the harder you train, the harder you have to recover, and the better the benefit you get. The problem that shows up in older athletes is that many of us have a muscle memory of what it was like to be 35.
Let the ego get in the way.
Yeah, and that is an injury waiting to happen. So when I take on new clients who are aging up, it's important that we just have like a go slow period, right? It's like, we're going to take a couple months and we're going to go slow and we're going to get used to this and we're going to make sure it works. And, you know, we're going to make sure you don't get injured and we're going to grow you slowly. And we're going to find out exactly how much rest and recovery you need. And then we go. So yeah, our conclusion was the topic that we chose for that podcast was fundamentally flawed, because what we do as coaches is kind of the same.
Yeah.
But the awareness of each individual client and the needs of each individual client in terms of how hard can you push the training and how hard can you push the rest and recovery, that's different for everybody. But so is a structured workout program different for everybody. I mean, if I was giving you a structured program, it would be different than every other athlete I coach. That's the beauty of coaching, right? We see people as people first and athletes second. And if you don't see people, your clients, as people first and athletes second, if you see them as athletes first and people second, that's when things go sideways, because now you're all of a sudden, you know, in a scenario where you're trying to train somebody like somebody else. Well, this worked for this person, so I'm going to just copy and paste that program here. but it doesn't work. And all the athletes I have, I sit down every week and I do a unique and individual program. There's no cut and paste because everybody's different. And I think that's the beauty of coaching. And I think that's why, AI training programs are not effective, why boilerplate stuff's not effective, why, training websites that just say, put in your age and weight and we'll give you a program are not effective. You need a human to help you be a good human.
Yeah. Where do you think people are going wrong with using AI to kind of help them build their training plans?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I switched coaches, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. And while I was in between, I tried an AI program, and it was exactly the same thing I just mentioned. It saw me as an athlete, not as a human. It didn't know anything about me, no matter what parameters I put in, no matter what schedule I put. It was impossible to get this thing to see me like a human being, like Jeff first, bike racer second. They all these programs seem to see the athlete as bike racer first, marathoner first, weightlifter first, human being second. And no machine is going to know you like a person who you talk to. It's just not going to happen. At least not, probably not in my life. Hopefully not in your life. So I think that if you're just starting out with structured training, your goals are not fixed yet. You're a generic, semi-fit regular person. You just want to try a program for, $15 a month or something like that. I think you can try it, but you run the risk of injury and you run the risk of not having enough fun. And if this is not fun, you won't do it. This is what we find with, especially people with Parkinson's and people coming to coaching, that if it's not fun, no one's going to do it. So the first question I ask anybody coming to me, regardless of, their comorbidities or their history, is like, what's fun? What do you like to do that's really fun? People say, I hate the bike. It's like, awesome, meet the rowing machine, or whatever, but I don't think that's anything AI can do. You're not going to put fun into a parameter of an AI system and have it come out with exactly what you like.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe I just got the wrong ones or something like that. I don't know. But I don't see it yet. And I sit with my little needs of Chat GPT and Claude and all these other things, and I use it for what it's good for, but I don't think it's good for training.
Okay. What does living and training with purpose mean to you?
Yeah, I think I demonstrated that with the Parkinson's thing, right? I think it means to me that these rides, these events that I do, this endless training 6 days a week, serves something other than me. It's a mountain climber thing, right? Why climb a mountain? Well, because it's there. But that doesn't seem to do it for me, right? I mean, I could go ride my bike and win races and set records and all that, and basically, do it to get my picture on Facebook. But when I turn around and I get all this support from a community that I adore, and I know is helping, and I know it's bringing people to the table who maybe don't know the resources that are available to them in this Parkinson's thing or something like that. I mean, that's a very simple and elegant way to do something with purpose, like ride a bike. I mean, how many charity rides do you see, or charity runs, or, the Susan B. Komen breast cancer run, which gets like, I don't know, 10,000 people here in San Diego, stuff like that. I think anytime you can take something personal and, have somebody benefit from it, that's training with purpose.
Yeah. I think having a high purpose bigger than yourself anyways makes it ensures you're going to finish something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I had one of the projects I did that required a pivot. I guess that's the nice way to put it. Was a little website that I built with a friend of mine called the Institute of Purpose. And it was a great idea that went nowhere, but it's still up. So if you're interested, instituteofpurpose.org. But we had this great name for something, right? But we didn't know what it was, the Institute of Purpose. And so what it ended up being was a small repository for short videos of people talking about what they consider their purpose. And there are any number of people. There's writers and podcasters and dancers and coaches and whatever. And when you listen to these collection of, I don't know how many are on there, 20 or 30 videos, at the end of the day, they're all the same. All of them. My purpose is in some way or another to serve others. And so I think it turned out to be not unique enough to make it a great project, but it was telling for us that, we just kept getting these little videos like, what are you doing this for? Well, it helps others. What are you doing this for? Well, it helps others, and again, we're in a time in history, at least in the US, where I think, looking down the street and figuring what you can do to help others, it's probably a good time for that.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I think where it might have failed was a lot of people didn't want to hear the truth on the matter that serving others above yourself is where you're going to find your real purpose at.
Yeah, what's it? The gift is in the giving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that you need to live near your coach?
No. Do you want me to expand on that?
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit?
No, because most of what we're doing now for the most is presenting programs through online systems. And so I don't need somebody in San Diego to go ride their bike in San Diego when they can ride in, Detroit or New York or Texas, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. No, I don't think I've ever lived near my coach. My current coach is in Boulder. It's like, I don't ever go to Boulder. So, and she doesn't ever come here, but, no, I don't think it matters at all. I think you just need to find the right person who is willing to be communicative with you. As a coach, the thing I hate the most is radio silence. I want people emailing, texting, calling whenever they feel like they need it. The idea, I have clients who, well, I don't want to call you because I don't want to bother you. It's like, that's what you're paying for. That's, well, it's not only what I'm here for, it's what you're paying for, right? It's like, it's not a bother. This is what we do. So I think that, again, that's the only way you get to learn about somebody is communicate with them. But I don't need to watch somebody go for a run. We do a lot by video. Like on the bike, I do a lot of like, let me see you on the bike. Let me see what you look like on video. And, we do a lot of that. But, no, we don't need to be near them. Do you think we need to be near your coach?
I don't. I mean, my one coach is a state away. Like some of the kids I coach, they're near me, but like towns away.
I think kids are different though, Ryan, because
but I can I'll go watch them here and there, but I don't need to be. I can talk to them on the phone and kind of gauge everything a little bit. So
I don't work with,
it's all from person to person too. I think as long as there's accountability there, everything will work out how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I don't work with young athletes. But I do think that when you have an attention span of a gnat, it probably helps to be close. But no.
Yeah. I love the quote on your website. Vision without action is a daydream. Yeah. Action without vision is a nightmare. What does this mean to you?
Well, I think it's pretty clear, right? If you can, if you don't have a plan, you just have to like close your eyes and run and see what you hit. I learned that, I heard that quote, I don't know, 40 years ago, and it was just listed as, anonymous Japanese quote is all it said. And I've had it in my mind ever since. So yeah, I think, a little vision goes a long way. It doesn't have to be successful. We've been talking about that, right? But a little bit of a plan ups your chances for success exponentially. So yeah.
I said that's a very good quote because it drew my attention right away when I went
Yeah.
to your center. Like, man,
Yeah.
that is awesome quote. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'll have to save that one for sure.
Yeah.
How important has personal development and upgrading your mindset been for you on this journey?
Oh yeah. Something between a lot and a lot more. One of the things that happens when you do hard sporting events, like a 6-hour bike ride on the track, is you start to realize that you can kind of do anything. I think the upside of doing these ultra endurance races and record attempts is that, if I can suffer through that kind of torture and come out the other side and still feel like, yeah, maybe I could do that again in some other day. You can certainly suffer through a 1-hour management meeting,
Yeah.
or, have some focus around, an argument with somebody and stuff like that. So I think the perspective that comes from doing these long events plays really well into life in general. And that mindset of like, I can kind of do anything now because I did this, I think is real. I think it's real.
I totally agree. I tell people that true confidence comes from doing hard things.
Yeah, and maybe not always successfully,
Yeah.
right? Sometimes you just have to take your licks.
Like all you gotta do is make it through. I mean, then it
Yeah.
gets a little easier the next time,
Yeah,
Just make it
yeah,
through.
and in a race or an event, you make it through and sometimes you win and sometimes you don't. And
Yeah.
if you do, great, and if you don't, it makes you stronger. So,
Yeah. What is one book you'd recommend on personal development or mindset?
mm, there is a great book that was written many years ago by a guy named George Leonard called Mastery. It's a tiny little book. It's behind me someplace. I could go dig it out. But um, the theory is, particularly in Western society, that the way we learn is on this plateau theory of education, right? You're on a plateau and then you learn something. You take a course or you have an event or you do something that causes you to have like this jump in your educational level or your experience level or something like that. And then you get on another plateau and you do that for a while until you hit the next jump. And you do that for a while and you take the next jump. The theory that he put forth is that the cool part of life is on the plateaus where you just got this big boost of education and now you get to experience it. But in Western society, we tend to race through the plateaus to get to the excitement or the energy or the whatever of the jump, because that's where the juice is. And then you race through the plateau and you miss all the cool parts of life where you could use what you just learned to get to the next jump, and you shoot up that one, then you race through the plateau. So George Leonard's Mastery really looks at the idea of do the jumps, but love the plateaus because that's where the fun of life is.
Wow, that's a interesting change in perspective for people to realize. I know even myself because I get on that plateaus like, man, I'm waiting for that next jump.
Exactly. No, it's exactly right. It's exactly right. And I've also gotten to a point where it's like, okay, I'm ready for something. I'm going to do something. I'm going to try something. Like I had this whole idea. I want to learn Spanish at like age, I don't know, whatever. And my wife grew up in Argentina. She's American, but she grew up in Argentina, so she's fluent. Has no patience to teach me how to speak Spanish. That's and so I started studying, and I took online courses, and I did this, and I read books, and and it was just such a struggle. I just didn't feel like I had the aptitude for it. So rather than keeping going and driving me and everybody else crazy and burning up hours and hours and hours, I just like, okay, I'm not going to do it. Close the books, put it all away, no sunk cost, and never did it. I still have like 8 words of Spanish in my vocabulary, but I don't care, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a pivot. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your short term and long term goals?
Well, I finished this record attempt the other day. Was it like 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago? And my first thought was, I'm 70. I don't have to do this again for 5 more years till I age up. So maybe that's a goal, do these records again at 70. But I like what I'm doing, right? I like working with the Parkinson's community. I like training on the bike. I like finding occasional events to do. I'm not in any way goal-less, but I'm also not obsessed by the next goal, the next race, the next thing. It's just, I'm having fun, right? We have grandkids. I have a great gig. I have a great bike. I have a great track community. I'm moving forward and making sure that every day is super fun. And, I'll do more races and I'll do more events and I'll set more records, or at least try them. But, yeah, I'm not obsessed by one thing or one other thing. It's just, I kind of have it dialed in now after all these years.
It took you a while to get there, though, huh?
I think it probably takes everybody a while to get here. I
Yeah.
look at the way my parents did it, my grandparents did it. And I look at what's happening with the grandchildren now, where they're, all over the map, and they're young. They should be all over the map. But, we have a generation of people. So my dad had like 2 jobs in his career, right? He was a teacher, and then he was a bureaucrat in state government. That was it. And, he did the last one for like 25 years or 28 years, something like that. Now, what's the average length of time someone spends in a job? 2.5 years?
Yeah, not very long.
Not very long. It's like, dudes, get some patience. Be good at something. Become a master of something before you race off to become a hack at something else. So, yeah.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
For coaching, Coach Me Strong, that works really well. If you're, interested in the Parkinson's thing, or just jeffscoaching.com is, that's the website. It's got, way too much information about me, but give you an idea of, cycling, scuba, filmmaking, keynote speaking, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
No, that was fun. Yeah, it was fun to have this conversation with you, and talk about the rides, and talk about what I don't know is next, because I don't know. Something serendipitously will hit me, and I will just say yes and give it a shot. And maybe it'll work, and maybe we'll pivot. I don't know.
I love your perspective on things. Like that perspective, if I could put that in a lot of other people around me, things would be a lot easier at
Maybe.
times.
Yeah, right. It's just nothing. Everything doesn't have to be a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right. Final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
oh, I've said that like 10 times in this last hour. Just say yes.
Just say no.
Absolutely. Just say yes. Don't. If you don't say yes, the answer is guaranteed to be no. Right? If you don't ask the question, the answer is guaranteed to be no. So if it looks like it might be interesting, have a whack. Find a safety net. Don't lose your house, but just say yes. See what happens. See what turns up. Might be amazing.
I love that advice. I love it. Well, Jeff, I can't thank you enough for coming on here today. I really enjoyed our conversation here, and you gave us a lot of great knowledge.
Yeah, it was fun. It's great to meet you, and great to talk about my favorite topic, which of course is me.
I think that's everybody's favorite topic.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So,
well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is to go through the fire.